Welcome back to the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on Tuesday, October 16th, 2018. You look at that date and you say, this might just be any Tuesday in October, but in fact, it is something much, much larger, and it is the first night of NBA basketball. We got Philadelphia and Boston tonight, and then OKC and Golden State. So 2 NBA games, and man, it feels good to have meaningful regular season NBA action back here in our lives. Thank you for listening to this on either SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or YouTube. Wherever you'd like to listen to this podcast, you can always find that, as well as the Jackson Neill Music and Anything Goes to Jackson Neill Podcast in the same feed as this one. So subscribe to whatever platform you wish to. But today I want to talk about the NBA because it is starting today, and in my mind, looking through this season, getting ready for it, it's becoming increasingly clear to me how this is a three-headed race for the NBA title, with 2 clear teams in the West and then the one team that's going to rise above everyone, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference. And I want to start in the Eastern Conference, where when you look at this, when you look at the teams and who's competing and what's going on right now, there's a couple teams that seem fairly interesting. One, the Toronto Raptors, with an upgrade getting Kawhi Leonard. He's a better basketball player than DeMar DeRozan is. DeRozan can score like none other. The fact is Kawhi is a better all-around player and has a lot of that scoring capabilities that DeRozan does. The question becomes, does Kawhi really fit in? Does he mesh? Does he do well? Does he want to play there? I mean, it's been a crazy past calendar year, just year in general for Kawhi Leonard. So we have to keep in mind what's going on with him. Then you look over some other teams, the Washington Wizards. Yes, while I like that roster, we've kind of seen how they can do. We know there's nothing too special with that Bradley Beal and John Wall combination. They added Dwight Howard, but when you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, specifically a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, I'll get to in a moment, you wonder, what are they going to do when Joel Embiid comes to town? Yes, they have Dwight Howard to put up against him, but what else? The Wizards just feel like a team that, although they'll compete, they'll get a mid-range playoff seeding, I think, as high as maybe even number 3 if they're able to go on a run or 2 during the course of the season, or maybe even as low as number 6 or number 7. I definitely think they're definitely a playoff team. The question just becomes what seed they are, but I don't think they have a legitimate shot at going for anything too important, especially the finals. Then the next 2 teams I'd point out would be the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers, 2 teams with this young core of players with them. The Milwaukee Bucks, obviously led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the rest of those young players that they have surrounding him, a very, very good team. Philadelphia 76ers, they have Joel Embiid. I think he's a rising superstar in this league. I think this year will go a long way in deciding that. If he's able to stay healthy, play a full game schedule, maybe miss a game or 2 for rest, whatever those reasons, but play the vast majority of games this season and put up some more ridiculous numbers, I think we have to start calling him a superstar. But still, we have to worry about his health because we know that's been an issue. Ben Simmons also as well, very good player, and another rising star on that team, Dario Saric. It's a very deep team. The team, though, I really circle in the Eastern Conference, of course, building up to this, is the Boston Celtics. Because when you look at that roster, the Boston Celtics, with Kyrie, with Gordon Hayward, those are all-star players. Kyrie is a player we know can make a shot to win an NBA Finals game, to win the NBA Finals in general. Gordon Hayward's a player who we've seen produce consistently over the course of several years. We have to see, him coming back from that injury. It's a devastating injury. Hopefully he can be the similar basketball player, but we know that with today, all the advances in player medical abilities and training and everything, we vastly expect Gordon Hayward to be able to return to form at least very close to what he was able to do before. So, with all that being said, the Boston Celtics have those 2 players, but that's not what I want to talk about mainly. Is because, yes, we know they're great, but if you take those players off the roster, this team still went 7 games with the Cleveland Cavaliers last year. A team led by LeBron James, a team that with LeBron had gone to so many, close to a decade straight of finals appearances, and with the Celtics missing their 2 best players, they're still able to take them that far in a series. Now, I know when you look at the Eastern Conference, you want to say the 76ers, you want to say the Raptors have a chance. But provided that nobody in Boston gets too upset by having their minutes cut, just because with Kyrie and Gordon Hayward back, players like Jaylen Brown, players like I'm looking for Jason Tatum, of course. I missed him. That's talking about a rising superstar in the NBA. Players like that who were really crucial in that run to go to the finals are now going to have to accept less minutes. Terry Rozier among them, and that usually is a spell for disaster in the NBA, because when you consider that professional basketball is so much about each individual player, that the last thing you want to do is give up control of that. For any player to give up your minutes, but there's one coach heads and shoulders above, I think, the rest of the NBA we're starting to see in terms of getting what he can out of his talent, and that's Brad Stevens. Because yes, Greg Popovich is an all-time coach. Yes, Steve Kerr is an all-time coach as well, but I think with what he's been able to do over the course of his time in the NBA thus far, Brad Stevens is making his case. I don't think he's not the clear number one, but in terms of getting the most out of what he has, he's the best at that. There's other aspects of coaching, maybe, we have not seen him have a team like Steve Kerr. Kerr's able to balance those egos, among anyone else, better than anyone else we've almost been able to ever see in NBA history. That's why you have all those all-NBA players on one roster. But Brad Stevens is a coach that's definitely one of the best in the NBA, top 3 at least. You could argue him as the best. So when you consider that this team, without their 2 best players, went 7 games, was within 1 game of going to the Eastern Conference Finals, now they're getting back 2 All-Stars, and LeBron James is leaving the conference, I don't really see how there's anybody who's really close to the Celtics in terms of getting to the finals. So that's on the Eastern Conference side. It's just, we know it's a weekend conference, but the Boston Celtics, to me, have to be the clear number one over there. And looking at the Western Conference, we know that the teams that are good, whether it's the Lakers now getting LeBron, the Trailblazers with that backcourt, the Thunder, they have a solid roster. But it comes down to as we know, the Warriors and the Rockets. That the Warriors are the clear favorites. But I would not count the Rockets, because although the Warriors did get better, I mean, whenever you consider the Warriors, the thing we kept saying was, they can't be great this long, that people are going to start leaving because of contract issues. And instead of people getting upset about their contracts, right now all we're seeing is people staying to take less money, including an All-NBA player like DeMarcus Cousins. So you look at the Warriors, and they're the clear favorites, although we've been hearing rumblings of little discontent among some players, maybe Klay Thompson, maybe Kevin Durant. I wouldn't buy into that too much, because even if there is some discontent in that locker room, at the end of the day, they're going to be winning a lot of basketball games, and that solves pretty much anything. And while you always worry about DeMarcus Cousins and the ability he has to blow up a locker room, this isn't Sacramento. This isn't New Orleans. These are the Warriors. These are the teams where they're going to be winning dozens and dozens of basketball games, where they're going to be ahead in the standings all the time, something that DeMarcus Cousins has never been a part of. So I don't view him as being too much of a locker room distraction. I view him as being some almost very refreshing for this basketball team, because you don't want to become complacent, and DeMarcus Cousins is a player so hungry to prove himself that, first of all, he's back after that injury, and second of all, that he deserves to be in the conversation for among the best players in the league, and not just constantly have that tag associated with him of, oh, well, we saw what happened in Sacramento. Oh, well, we don't really know if he has his head in the game. So I think DeMarcus Cousins actually provides the Warriors with not only just a big man, on the court, but this almost swagger and this almost edge off of it, where I foresee him getting into it with Draymond Green. I foresee him in practice going after it with Green and keeping Green on his toes and keeping the rest of the guys on their toes, because, yes, Durant, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Kurt, they all have multiple championships now. But Cousins doesn't have that, and Cousins wants that. So I view Cousins as being actually, in some ways, helping this team stay together when maybe it could fall apart. Then the other team I want to transition over to is the Houston Rockets, because the Houston Rockets, we saw them go toe-to-toe with the Warriors last year. And while the Warriors got better, I don't think we can – the Rockets also added Carmelo Anthony, and Carmelo Anthony is a player who, looking through his career, I don't know if we can all of a sudden count him in that he's going to be, let's say, too eager to maybe have a sixth man role, which I think that maybe not. I don't know if it's going to be like that for the whole season, but there's definitely going to be points. He'll definitely fluctuate between being a starter and the sixth man, and while he has the talent to provide some great scoring, the problem you always wonder about him is, will he contribute on the defensive end of the floor, considering that you have a player like James Harden already on the floor, who his defense is better, but still suspect. That becomes a concern when you're going up against teams like the Warriors, where every position has a possibility of basically beating you. So that becomes difficult. But when you have James Harden and when you have Chris Paul, you got to automatically be towards the top of those standings. And while I look at the Lakers and while I look at LeBron James joining them, and while I want to say that is going to catapult them into the top range of this conference, I just can't bring myself to do that, because LeBron James, as we know, has been to, I think it's 8 straight finals. You can barely keep count at this point. We all know how great he is. We all know how many finals he has. We all know what he can do on the floor. We know that he is the best player on the planet right now. The problem then becomes who's surrounding him, because he could take this Cleveland team to the finals in the East because, frankly, it was not that good. Still struggled against the Boston Celtics team with their 2 players out, but the Celtics were also the best team besides the Cavs, and they were missing their 2 players. So it was just an Eastern Conference that was so banged up, that was so just devoid of talent, really. So we have to keep that in mind when we consider LeBron and him going to the finals all the time, is just the fact that it was such an easy road at certain times. Maybe not on his team in terms of people getting injured or whatever and not having the surrounding talent. The way he was able to carry them was absolutely incredible. But in terms of not having that much of competition. So now in the Western Conference, you have to build in that competition of there's going to be a good team against you every single night. Because a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, we know they're kind of imploding, whatever, but they're not even in the top tier of this conference. The Portland Trailblazers have one of the best backcourts we've seen in a while. And if you'd really talked me into it, I could see them missing the playoffs. The Utah Jazz have such a great amount of up-and-coming talent, but you really think they're going to truly compete against the Warriors come playoff time? So when you begin to understand just how deep the Western Conference is, you begin to see that LeBron and the Lakers are not going to make that big of an impact this year. During the regular season, I could see them as best getting the 3 seed. But if we want to seriously consider what teams are going to make it far, the Lakers are a little far away. They're not there yet. I applaud. I like LeBron moving to the Lakers. I think it does a lot of things, whether it's because that same question we've been kept saying, even I'm saying, is making it out of the Eastern Conference year after year, how much of an accomplishment is that really? It really only takes 1 year of him making it out of the Western Conference to really debunk that rumor saying, well, look, he did it out of the Western Conference, so it didn't really matter which conference he was in. He still dominated. I think there were so many factors for him going to Los Angeles that I think it was a good move overall. But this is not the year. And it becomes almost like we expect him to compete because it feels like he's been there for so long because we talk about it so much, but it's only been a couple months. It really has. It was, I believe it was July 1st or June 30th or whatever, within that time frame really when this happened. It was like the first day of July. And that was about a little over 3.5 months ago. So he's been there for 3.5 months. I don't see the Lakers competing for a championship seriously. I see them making a solid effort in the playoffs, but I don't understand, and I don't understand the predictions placing them as being a legitimate title contender. If they can acquire a player like Kawhi Leonard or someone they might be going after in free agency, if they could acquire them mid-season and add a superstar player, because we know that everybody wants to play with LeBron, and that with that front office, anything's possible, as we just saw them getting LeBron. then things change. But as of the roster right now, as of how things are right now, the Lakers are not a championship basketball team. It's going to take at least one free agency period for them to get some stars, maybe get a little more maybe a little more veterans in there. But they're making the right steps. They're getting players like Rondo to maybe toughen Lonzo Ball up. We know the impact that LeBron will have on the rest of the rookies. They're getting some other older guys and veterans to come in there. But once you see them get that other superstar to really, truly pair again alongside LeBron, give these guys a year under James's tutelage to maybe really improve their game and see the game in a completely different way, because we know LeBron can do that. We see Lonzo Ball maybe work on a shot a little bit this year and then really improve it the next offseason, because I think that's when you start to see this team compete for an NBA championship. But as of right now, it's a three-team race. It's between the Golden State Warriors, the Houston Rockets, and the Boston Celtics. And while it may seem that the winner of the Western Conference Finals is going to win the NBA Finals, a part of me doesn't want to concede that just yet. Because if you're the Boston Celtics and you have this tremendous roster like they have, you're telling me they can't go through the East pretty much unscathed. A series against the 76ers would be a tough one. One against the Raptors would be pretty tough. But overall, I think they could get out of both of those without having to go 7 games. So if you're telling me they can go pretty much unscathed through the Eastern Conference, meanwhile, the Warriors have to open up against a team like the Trailblazers, then go and play the Lakers, then go and play the Rockets, or vice versa, the Rockets to do that, where they're just getting completely beat up by the Western Conference to the playoffs, going 7 or going several games each and every playoff series. I could see the Celtics sneaking away with the finals in that scenario. Where the Western Conference winner just gets so beat up from the schedule of having to play against these teams, because the Western Conference is just that deep. So while the Warriors are the clear favorites, I don't want to concede the title to them just yet, because we have to see them, play it out on the court. And as always, there's always injuries, there's always trades, free agent signings, always things like that always happen through a season. But Boston Celtics, Houston Rockets, or Golden State Warriors, one of those 3 teams will win the NBA Finals. And I really don't, disregarding a major trade that shakes up trades that shake up the league, or major injuries, I don't see how not one of those teams wins the finals. I'll put it that way. And with that, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I've been having a lot of interviews on the show recently, but just wanted an opportunity to talk out and discuss some things about the NBA. Really excited for the season start. Look out for more of these podcasts. It's just me discussing. I want to get more involved in that. And also, these interviews, last week had a couple great ones with Nate Davis discussing his NFL power rankings, Larry Hawley discussing Notre Dame. Go back and check those episodes out. I know they're about a week old, and some news has changed, but they're still very, very good interviews, and very, very, very awesome people to talk to. They have tons of insight, way more than I definitely think I could ever offer on those subjects. So check those interviews out. Also, subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can find it, whatever platform you're on right now, that works. Subscribe to it. In the same feed of the Jackson Neill Music and Anything Goes, the Jackson Neill Podcast. On the Jackson Neill Music Podcast, I talk to music writers, talk to music people. I discuss things about music, any genres. I'll have a really cool interview coming out, and hopefully a podcast coming out tomorrow about that, so stay tuned for that. Anything Goes with Jackson Neill. That one of my personal favorites. Don't want to like to play favorites between the podcasts, but that one's always so fun to do. That's where I interview musicians. Have a really cool interview coming out this Thursday with New Orleans rapper Alfred Banks. He was so fun to talk to. I can't wait for you guys to hear that. It's coming out this Thursday in the same field that you're listening to right now. So just come back on Thursday and you'll find that. Also, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JacksonNeill20 to catch additional content from all my podcasts, links to when they get published, and just some other great stuff that I post on there. Like I said, links to all that great stuff in the description of this podcast, whatever platform you are listening. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.